event that's being run by NoCoders and Dittofi. So I'm going to throw over immediately to the host from NoCoders, which is Tanya. Just going to give a bit of background to NoCoders, and then I'll start talking through what we're going to be looking at over the next few weeks with Datafight.
Sure. Hello, everyone. I'm Tanya, founder of NoCoders, and we are primarily an education business in the no-code space. We started with office hours, which we do 7 times per week now, and we answer any of our members' questions about no-code that they might have. And we've also founded No Code School, where we teach people currently Bubble-related things, but soon to be Dittofi-related things. And from scratch, you can learn how to be an intermediate developer with 250 hours of curriculum. And yeah, we're excited to embrace Dittofi, and we are in the middle of learning everything we can about Dittofi. And we're so excited to watch James and Samuel present Dittofi and building a learning management system to you today.
That's great. Thank you very much. So what we're going to be doing over the next 4 weeks is we're going to be building a learning management system. So we're going to be building it using Dittofi. Before we start, I just wanted to give the quick introduction. So Tanya's obviously just introduced herself. Again, I'm James. I'm CEO and co-founder of Datafight. I'm actually a serial entrepreneur. So I've started, I think this is my 4th company now. And the last couple of companies I've done with my brother, Samuel, who is also, who'll be doing the majority of the training today, but he's CTO and co-founder as well. So you'll hear from him in about 5 minutes time. So the agenda for the 4 weeks is a 4-hour agenda split over 4 weeks. So as I mentioned, we're going to be building a learning management system and showing you how to do that on Dittofi. The week one today, so we're going to cover database design and setup. So we're going to be looking at how you can actually design a scalable database for your learning management system, how you build relationships between tables, what the types of data are that you're going to store in your application. And then in the subsequent sessions, we're going to be building back-end features and the front end of the application. At the end of the 4 weeks, what we'll do is we'll be actually giving away the source code for the application and also the application template to everybody who attends these events. And we'll also be giving away some other discounts to the platform as well for anybody who wants to sign up and test out the platform for themselves over the next 4 weeks. So to start with, I thought it would be useful for anybody who doesn't already know just to go quickly over what Dittofi is. And why it's different from other no-code platforms that are in the market today. This bit of the presentation is only going to take about 5 minutes, and then we'll get into the actual building of the application. But I just wanted to set some context for anyone who hasn't heard of us so far. So the way we're positioning ourselves in the market at the moment is we're putting ourselves out there as a hybrid no-code platform. So what we are trying to do is the way we see the market is we sort of see that if you look at the image on the right-hand side of the page, we see that the existing no-code platforms that are in the marketplace are very, very good at building applications very, very fast, but that when these applications hit a certain level of scale, they start to have some issues with them and some challenges that come up. And we think that the primary reason that those issues arise are because you don't actually have the flexibility of being able to access and control the source code for your applications. So what we are looking to do with our hybrid model for no code is to provide a visual interface, which is comparable in terms of speed for delivery for initial app development as the other no-code platforms in the market. But we also want to generate really high-powered, high-end source code, which will allow you to build really big scalable applications that have absolutely no limitations at all. And to give you kind of some numbers that we have so far, we've had users build applications today using our technology that have supported over 100,000 end users. We've done projects, Samuel and myself, with like stock exchanges and banks, where we've had to process over 100 million real-time records within a 12-hour period. And we've also had to store and analyze those records over the course of a year, so storing over 20.6 billion records. So we're talking about sort of applications that really have to work at some serious scale. And we've been able to achieve that using the same technology stack that we're presenting to you today. So in essence then, what hybrid no-code is, it's a way that you can build applications visually. So using the traditional no-code style visual interfaces where you have a visual way of building out software applications. It allows you to complete software 600% faster than coding. So it's getting you from your idea to your finished application much, much faster than traditional coding. It gives you a super high quality tech stack that you actually own, that you can access and touch. You can have developers, if you need at some point in the life, actually go in and modify parts of the code base if you need to optimize, let's say, core algorithms in the system. In Dittofi, we generate our front ends in React and our back ends in Google Go. So, very like super fast back end, very highly concurrent applications. But we don't just give you the code and leave you on your own. So we don't just take those visual designs and transform them into code. We also give you a one-click deployment model, which allows you to run your applications on massively scalable infrastructure. And we spent a lot of time and a lot of money developing our infrastructure. So we think that you can save roughly, if we compare what we've spent on our infrastructure development, this back-end portion over here represents what you actually get when you launch your applications with the one-click deployment model. So it all runs inside Amazon Web Services, and we use a whole bunch of Amazon Web Services in order to make it a massively scalable setup for your application to run in. This ensures that your users will have the best user experience, that your application is highly available. We offer now 99.99s of availability for applications. And your application itself, in terms of the infrastructure that it runs on, is automatically scalable as well. So if you suddenly have a burst of 100,000 users that are all suddenly accessing your application at once, the system will then scale up automatically in order to handle that. And we do that by using pre-configured AWS services. And the best thing about all of this is it's actually really, really low cost to run as well, because we use a lot of serverless computing, which for various reasons is much lower cost than if you do things the traditional way of setting up like physical servers. So we've got a lot more information on that and who we are and everything, and probably the best place to go to see that information is on the Datafight blog, which you can see on the website. And what we try and do on the Datafight blog is we're trying to educate as well as provide insights into what our platform does, but to try and sort of strike a balance between developer and non-developer on the blog, so that it can be useful for people to learn more about technology and get sort of like really good information about and honest information about what the state of their applications are today. So with all that being said, I wanted to pass over to Samuel now, who's going to kick off with the live app build and training for the learning management system.
Awesome. So yeah, I'm Samuel. I'm the CTO at Dittofi, co-founder, and I'm going to be going through today basically kicking off with kind of how we're going to architect the database for this app that we're building. This is kind of the first step that I take personally for building out any application, because it kind of sets the scene for all of the functionality that you're going to be implementing in the app. And it's the thing that kind of gives you direction for where you're actually going in your app build. So the way we're going to do this is basically break this up into kind of 3 parts that you can see kind of high level here. The first part is going to be looking at the kind of individual, what we call like database entities. in short, this is basically discussing kind of what data we actually need for our app. Every app you build is going to be, like I said, built around data. So the first step is really figuring out what that data is that you're going to be storing, data you're going to be tracking, and how that kind of fits into the whole workflow of the app. We're then going to go through the kind of individual properties for those different data entities that we've set up, and look a bit at how you can kind of ensure data integrity through this concept of constraints. So how we can make sure that we don't get any kind of invalid data into our database. This is quite an important point. Often you can use kind of your front-end design or your workflows and that kind of thing to manage your data. But behind all of that, you need to have some kind of constraints on your database as well, to make sure, I guess, a kind of additional fail-safe to make sure that you never get kind of any invalid data put into your entities that you've created. And then finally, we're going to be talking about relationships. So how different entities in your database are kind of related to each other. And we'll also at that point maybe kind of refactor a bit of what we've put together, having taken into consideration the different relationships and that kind of thing by now. So first up, first point, just to clarify again, what do we actually mean when we use the word entities? So for every single application you build, you're going to be tracking bits of data about certain things. In our case, we're going to be building a learning management system. This learning management system is going to include functionality to do things like upload courses that people can then take. So a certain bit of data we're going to need to track is going to be courses. We're also going to have a concept of instructors who can come and like upload courses. So we're going to have to track data about those instructors. We're going to have concepts of like a lesson that people can take. So we're going to need to track data about those lessons. Each one of these things I've just said, like a course, an instructor, a lesson, this is essentially what we mean when we use this word entity here. It's basically a person, a thing, a place, some kind of collection of attributes essentially. So how do you kind of work out what data you're actually going to need for your app? Well, to do that, we can think in terms of workflows. We can think in terms of what do you actually want your app to do. I've just said, for example, an initial kind of workflow, initial bit of functionality we want is we want an instructor to come to our app and be able to create a course. We want end users of our app to be able to log in and view those courses that the instructors created. We want to have quizzes associated with our courses so people can log in, look at a course, take a quiz about it. We want to have lessons with video content, and we want end users to be able to kind of interact with the courses by posting comments. So each one of these different things we've highlighted in red here, these are essentially then going to be the different kind of entities for our app. So you can see by kind of breaking your app down and looking at what you're trying to actually accomplish, you can figure out what the actual entities are that you need to store data on. In our case, it's going to be courses, users, quizzes, lessons, comments, etc. So having kind of given that initial introduction, how we're going to break that down, I'm just going to step in across one tab into the actual Dittofi platform here. So the screen we're looking at here is basically the main builder for the app. There's a whole bunch of different tabs here which allow you to do different things. You've got stuff for building the front end of your app. This screen here for kind of setting up our database, which we're going to be working with today. And then we've got screens to do things like set up like workflows for your app as well, and a whole bunch of other things that we'll be looking at over the next few weeks. But to kick things off then, if I go back to this second tab here. This is where we're going to come to start adding those entities that we just talked about. So to begin with, I'm going to start just by clicking Add Table here, and I'm going to come and add a table called Users. This is going to be the table where any user who's kind of interacting with our app is going to live. I mentioned before, we've kind of got two types of users. We've got instructors who are going to come and post content, post courses. And then we've got, I guess you might call it the end users of your app who are going to come in and actually look at the courses. Some people might think we might want to have two tables, like an instructors table and a users table. But I would go with just one table for this. And the reason for that is the functionality that the instructors and users are going to have, and the data that we're storing about them. A lot of it's going to be shared. So a lot of users are going to have, or our instructors and our users, they're all going to have like a name, an email. They're all going to have the ability to log into the app. So it makes sense to kind of keep all that data in one table rather than splitting it across different tables. So if we start thinking again about the kind of workflows that our users going to have, we said the first thing people are going to do is kind of log into the app if you're an instructor, and post up like a course. So the first thing they're going to need to do is actually log in. If we're going to log into the app, they're going to need to have some concept of a username and a password, or they might have an email and a password, but some way of authenticating themselves. So I'm going to start off by adding an email column. This will just be a plain single line text column. You'll see when I add this, I have some additional options underneath. We have this option here, which you can check to allow what we call null values. And this essentially means allowing people to enter empty data into the column. In our case, we want to uncheck this because we never want there to be a case where someone signs up without an email. So I'm going to click Save Now. That will add this column to my table. I'm then going to add a password column. As I said, we want users to be able to kind of log in with an email and password. For the password column, I'm going to use the password column type. This is very similar to the single line text type. The main difference is this is going to kind of encrypt any data that goes into this column, so that you can't, even as like the admin of this app, won't be able to see what the user's passwords are. We're then going to add a few additional fields. We can add a first name, single line text as well. This will be the first name of the user. For this one here, we can leave the allow null values option on. This will allow people to sign up with just email and password and then input their first name and last name later on. And then I'll add, last name as well, which will be a text field. We said that our users can be of two types. We can have an instructor, or we can have just an end user. If you think again in terms of workflows, you can think your instructor is going to log in and basically see a screen where they can post up a course, whereas users, when they log in, are just going to see screens where they can actually view their courses. So we do need some way of differentiating between our instructor and our end user. And to do this, we can add another column here, which I'm just going to call role, the A text column. And we're going to make this one so you have to put data in as well. So uncheck this option here. That sets up the kind of initial users table here. So we now have an ability for someone to kind of sign up to our app, someone to log in and start collecting data about those users. We have the relevant columns we need for that. As you build out your app, you might want to go on and add more things, like you might want to track more data about your users, such as their addresses, phone numbers, that kind of thing. But for now, this is enough to get started. So again, continuing on the kind of workflow theme, once the user's logged in, if they're an instructor, we said we're going to give the user the ability to upload a course. So the next thing we're going to need is just a courses table here. I'm just going to add table and just rename this one to courses. For our courses, each course is going to have obviously a name. There's going to be a name to the course the people are taking. So we're going to need to add a name column, which is going to be a text field as well. And then I'm also going to add the kind of person that actually created this course. We want to know which particular user created which particular course. To do this, you might be thinking we could come here and add, like a first name, something for like the instructor name or something like that for the instructor who actually created the course. But this is where we come to this third concept that I was talking about of relationships. If you think about it like this, each course is going to have a user that actually created that course. So we can see already there's a relationship between the users and the courses. Each instructor has the ability to create a course, is another way of putting it. So to do that in our platform, what you can do is add a column here, which I'm just going to call user ID. This is going to be a number column. And this user ID here is essentially going to reference the user that actually created this course. So it's going to reference a record from this users table here. So I'm just going to save this now and give you an example. If I come back to my users table now, I'm just going to add in some dummy records. So I'll click this little plus button here. I'll add in a dummy email. So could this be test@gmail.com, dummy password. And let's just do my own name for this. The role we can do in instructor, like so. And then save. So this adds a dummy user into our users table. You'll see when we add this user, we get all the data we put in, obviously. But in addition, we get this ID column here populated. This gets populated with a number, which is going to be different. It's going to be unique for every single record that we add. If we were to add a second record in here, that second record is going to get a different number. So let's just do test2.com. I'll just call this one test. We can call this user. Or in fact, let's do, I'll name it here. So this second record here that we put in, this one gets ID 2 on it. So you can see we've got a unique ID for every single record, and it basically increments by 1 for every single record that we add. If I want to say now that this course, the first course in this table, was created by this particular user here, I can come in here and I could do a course, which I could call, let's say, web development, is the name. And then I can set the user ID to 1 and save. Now this is saying user ID 1 created this particular course here. So this user ID is referencing the first user 1 in this particular table. So this is an example of how different tables are related to each other, how these different entities are going to be related to each other. This in itself, if you want to be more technical and see more examples of this, we could add a second course here, which we could call, let's say, database design. And again, we could add user ID 1 here and just click save again. And you can now see that user ID 1 has created 2 courses, this course and this course. So the reasons for separating the data out like this, number one is to prevent kind of data redundancy. We don't want to be recreating the same bits of data in multiple tables. So had I done something like instructor name as a column and added in a name of one of my users here, we would then be replicating the name from the users table into the courses table. And we never want to be doing that. We never want to be kind of repeating data in multiple places. And the other reason that you can see now is that this gives us the ability to say that one user can create kind of multiple courses. So this is what people would refer to as a many-to-one relationship. We can have many courses for one user. That's all that means. But you can just think of it in the case that we want to allow one of our users to create multiple courses. So it makes sense to have a separate courses table with this user ID column here. Now, if we continue with our kind of workflow, we've said user can log in and create courses. We then said different courses can have lessons associated with them. So if you were doing the web development course, you might have a lesson on front-end design, you might have a lesson on back-end development, you might have lessons on like JavaScript or whatever. So there can be, in other words, different lessons that are going to be created and associated with this particular course here. So I'm going to come here, add another table. This one I can call lessons. And again, a lesson is just going to have a name for now. It could be a text field. I'm going to uncheck this allow null values option here. And then we want to say that each lesson belongs to a particular course. So we want to say one course can have multiple lessons. So again, rather than coming in here and doing course name and kind of retyping in web development as the course name, we're going to do course ID, which will be a number field. And this is going to reference a particular course that we've already created in our courses table here. So to give you an example, we can just click here, do course ID 1, and then we can do like front end. And then again, we could do course ID 1 again, and let's say back end. So now we have the ability for someone to log into our app, to create a course that's kind of associated with them, and then to create lessons which are associated with that particular course. So we then said, once the person's done this, that course will then be available for a regular user to actually log in and see. So a regular user will then come to the platform and they'll see a list of courses. They'll be able to kind of click on a course maybe and see a list of lessons that are associated with that course. And then we said the person will be able to then post comments to kind of interact with the instructor of the course. So post feedback on the course, ask questions, that kind of thing. So we're going to need to have a entity we said already called comments, which is where they're going to come and post these particular comments. each comment is going to have some text, which is going to be the actual comment the person types in. So we can let's have a column here that I would call comment, which is going to store the individual comment the person made. So that can be a single line text field. Again, we'll uncheck this. We don't want to allow people to enter in empty comments. We also know that a particular person is going to be posting this comment, and we probably want to know who that person is. So for example, I might log in, see a course, and then post a comment. So again, we want to come here and use this reference back to our users table. So we can have a column here called creator ID, which will be the ID of the person who created the comment. So this will be a number again. And again, want to uncheck this because we never want to get in a situation where a comment hasn't got a creator. And then we also want our comment to be linked to a particular course. So we want people to be able to post comments regarding a particular course. So for that, again, we're going to have a reference back to our original courses table here. So I'm just going to come here and do course ID, number, and again, uncheck this because we never want a situation where there's just a comment hanging around. It has to be related to a particular course. So if we kind of recap, we now have the ability for someone to sign up to our app, to log in with email and password. That person can be an instructor or a user. An instructor can come in and post courses. We know which instructor has posted which course because of this reference we've created back to our users table. Once they've created a course, they can create lessons for that course. We know which particular course each lesson belongs to because we've added this course ID column here. And then our end users can actually log into the app and they can post comments for on a particular course. We know which user has created a comment because we've got this creator ID column here, which references the user that actually created the comment. And then we also have this course ID column here, which tells us which course the comment belonged to. Last bit of functionality we wanted to add was the ability for someone to take a quiz for a particular lesson. So someone's going to look at a lesson, and once they finish, they're going to take a quiz regarding it. So the final thing we'll need is a table here, which we're going to call quizzes. In fact, we'll just call this questions. We're going to have different questions that people can take regarding a particular lesson. So we're going to need to know what is the question the person's actually taking. So we'll have a column here called question, be a single line text column. And we're going to uncheck this again to make sure that we never have an empty question. And then the questions themselves are going to be associated with individual lessons. So each lesson could have multiple questions underneath it. Someone will take the lesson and they'll see the questions and be able to answer them. So we need to say which lesson is a particular question associated with. So to do that, we'll have a column here called lesson ID, which will be a number column. And I'll uncheck this again to make sure that our questions always belong to a lesson. And then this lesson ID is going to reference a particular lesson here. So for example, I could add lesson ID 1, and then I could have a question like define front end is. This will be a question then associated with lesson number 1. The instructors will be logging in and creating these questions in advance, and then the end users will be logging in, going through the courses and the lessons and actually answering the questions. So I would add as well one final table here, which can be one to actually store the answers. So we can have a table here called answers. Each answer is going to be created by a particular end user. So a user is going to log in and answer a particular question. We want to know which user answered the question. So we can have a user ID column here, which is going to reference the user that actually answered the question. Then we need to know which question does this answer actually belong to. So does the answer belong to this question here that we've made? So again, to do that, we can add another column here, which will be question ID. We'll reference the question that the answer is associated with. And then we can have the answer itself, which can just be a single line text. So what we've done now is defined the individual entities that are going to support the functionality for our app. If I click through onto this relations button here, you can kind of see a diagram of these different entities. I'm just going to pull these apart and zoom out a little bit so you can see all of these in one go. And these are kind of all the entities that we're going to need for our initial app build. As you go through, you might want to add kind of additional columns, additional attributes to the different entities that you've made. Like I said, you might want to store more data on your users, like their phone numbers and so on. You might want to maybe store the time a particular comment was created, things like that. But important to get this kind of base down. And then as you build, you can add kind of additional features and so on as you want. We also discussed kind of the relations between the data. And what we can do now is if I kind of click on this add relation button here, is I can actually visually draw these relations on our diagram as well. So I can say user ID for the answers is associated with this users table here. So each answer is going to have a user. I can say each answer is going to be an answer to a particular question. So I'll get my question ID here and associate that with the ID up here. I said each question is going to belong to a particular lesson. So I can take my lesson ID we set up before and attach that to the ID here. I said each course is going to get created by a particular user. So I can take my user ID field here and associate it with the ID field here. And then finally, we said each comment is going to get posted by a user, which we're calling the creator ID. So I can take my creator ID here and associate it with my ID field here. And we also said each comment is going to belong to a particular course. So I can take my course ID and drag that over here. I'll just reorder this a tiny bit. It's a bit neater. This kind of shows us a bit more visually what's going on. The other important thing about kind of defining the relations like this is this comes back to the point I mentioned at the start of ensuring we have proper data integrity by defining constraints on our tables. So these lines that we've drawn between the tables Technically, these are referred to as foreign key constraints. And what this means is the database is going to prevent you from ever entering in invalid references between the tables. So, for example, it will never let me create a question with a lesson ID that doesn't exist in our lessons table. It will never allow me to create an answer with a user ID that doesn't exist in my as an ID in my users table. So these lines that we've drawn between them, they kind of visually show us what's going on, but more importantly, they prevent there ever being any kind of errors in your data. That's something you want to manage at the kind of database table level rather than trying to manage elsewhere in your app. The other constraint that I wanted to mention, so these are the foreign key constraints, is sometimes we want to say that certain columns can never have like duplicate data in them. So we want to say that we never have two people signing up with the same email, for example. And to do that, if I just click on this table options button here, this shows me a kind of overview of my table settings. And have a setting here for unique constraints. I can do add constraints. And here I can pick the columns that create that constraint. So I want to say that the email column has to be unique. I can just put email here. If I wanted there to be a unique combination of columns, you can also do that by adding multiple. So you might want to say, I want to have no users that both have the same first and last name, for example. We don't want that. We just want the email. So I'm just going to switch this to email here. And you can give this a name. I'll just call this, let's say, unique email, and save. So this is now going to prevent the situation where we ever have two identical emails in the database. And then the foreign key constraints that we set up are going to prevent the situation where we ever have courses created by users that don't exist, lessons created associated with courses that don't exist, and so on. So that's the initial setup of the database. If I go back here. So yeah, once we've kind of set up the database design, the next step I would take in the app development process is actually building out those workflows that I was talking about that actually defined what the design would be in the first place. So for example, we said we needed the ability for people to log into our app. That workflow was why we decided to add an email and password column. We said we needed people to upload courses and lessons, which is why we added those courses and lessons tables. So in the next session, what we'll be doing is kind of building out those workflows to actually do that, to actually start populating these tables with data. Once you've done that part of it, you have a kind of full feature LMS system, which can manage like uploading courses and lessons and so on. And the final part after that is to actually come and kind of put an interface in front of that, allow a front end to interact and actually use those different features that you've built out. So that's all I wanted to talk through now. I guess I can hand back over to James to kind of summarize, and if there's any outstanding questions, answer those as well.
Yeah, sure. So thanks, Samuel. I think there are a few ways or a few additional things to tie it off here. So we have, if you want to sign up and try inputting the database structure yourself for your own LMS, so what we've got is the sign up link there, so you can get into the platform on the website by clicking on the login button. And if Samuel, can you take over to the next few slides? So there's a discount code that you can use there as well, which I think we can drop into the chat here as well. So that will give you free access to the platform if you want to test it out. I'm just going to grab that from here as well, or if Tanya, you could grab that and drop that in. That'd be great.
Yep, on its way.
And then we also have, at the moment, we're running Datafight boot camps as well. So what we're doing is we're doing customized bootcamp sessions where we'll actually show you, you'll work directly with Samuel or one of the members of his team in order to build out your software application over the course of an 8-hour bootcamp. So it will be similar to this sort of work we went through today. The difference is it will be specifically tailored towards building your application. So advising you exactly how to structure your database itself. So you can get to that as well by visiting the Dittofi website. And what you'll need to bring with you if you want to come on one of those programs is you'll need to bring with you like an idea of something that you actually want to develop within a short space of time. And you'll also need to bring at least a list of the workflows, let's say, that describe what it is you're looking to develop. And if you go through that process, then Samuel and the rest of his team are pretty much experts at sort of looking at applications, figuring out what, let's say, the database structure should look like, and then putting it into an actual app. And then the final thing on the list, which Samuel, if you could take over to the final slide, there's also go back a slide. There's also pro NoCoders themselves. I don't know, Tanya, if you want to give a few words about what pro NoCoders are doing with Dittofi in terms of training and app development.
Sure. So we are training hard on Datafight right now to take it over as a fully supported no-code platform. And how we support our members in order to help them get unstuck when they're building no-code platforms like Datafi is we offer 7 times per week office hours, and it actually happens right about this time. So in about 10 minutes, it's going to start every weekday. And then we also offer US evening times on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And you can come and ask us any question about Dittofi that you would like, and we will do our best to answer it right there in real time. If we can't answer it in real time, we will find the answer for you and help you get unstuck. So you can check out office hours membership. It's called the developer membership on our website at pronocoders.com.
Awesome. Thank you very much, then, to Samuel for going over the presentation. And thank you, Tanya, as well, for helping to host this and to also help promote it as well to the various communities. It's great to work with you guys. So I'm just checking.
We have some good questions going on. So do we need to sign up for each week of this LMS build via Eventbrite, or are we already signed up if we signed up for the first week?
I believe you're already signed up for the full 4. I can double check that, and I have everyone's emails here of who came, so I can send out a note afterwards to check. If I've made a mistake there, but I think you're automatically signed up for all 4.
Don't worry, Charlie. I didn't skip your question. I was just working my way back up to make sure I didn't miss anybody. Yep. So, who are your primary competitors? So, this is an excellent question. I would like to hear James's version, and then I can tell you my version of this answer.
Sure. So we have, I'd say, at the moment, we're really the only people who are sort of building applications in this sort of like hybrid no-code way. So the competition, I would say, would be both in the visual app development space and also in the traditional development space. So we come up in most of our pitches, depending on the place we acquired a customer from, will come up either against a no-code, another no-code platform itself, or a low-code platform, or will come up against like a traditional development solution. So it really sort of depends on who we go up against, but in which area we're working. But right now, there's nobody who's kind of doing things quite the way we are in terms of generating sort of enterprise grade code and full stack source code. And also, there's nobody who's doing this sort of at the level of hosting that we're doing either for the actual applications themselves. So yeah, thank you very much for that, Charlie.
Awesome. Yeah, and I would say similar to James, and then I would add that having spent the last a few years of my life in no code, specifically with a Bubble focus, I think that most of the time I hear people are moving to Bubble because it's less limited than the other ones. And having spent so much time in Bubble, we're really excited about Dittofi specifically because it is eliminating a lot of the limitations that we have found in Bubble. And so anytime you can remove the barrier to the code itself so you can get access to what you need to do to customize the app, and the more efficiently you can build, the faster, the more performant your app is going to be, the happier your customers are going to be. And that's why we're focusing on Dittofi.
Thank you, Tanya. It's great to hear.
Yeah. Let's see. So, Marcus, did you want to ask one of your questions? Oh, I'm sorry. You can ask in either the chat or I can unmute you. Hang on just a second. I can find you to unmute you. There you go.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I have quite a few questions here because I think it's a really interesting system and prospect. So just one question would be, if I was to start using the system, what would be the biggest surprise I might find after a couple of weeks of getting my hands, into the system? Are there any big surprises? Let's say I have recently been learning Bubble, and I have had a couple of surprises in Bubble. So I'm just wondering if you could mention for Dittofi.
Sure. What sort of surprises have you had, or what would you classify as a surprise, I guess?
Oh, I suppose for Bubble, maybe just some of the naming terminology. I think has taken some getting used to. So I'm just trying to understand, maybe once people join the platform, are there areas that are still being developed, or you've got teething issues in that are a bit on the bleeding edge, maybe? I'm not sure if I'm asking the...
Are you approaching this from the point of view as, so if the naming is confusing in Bubble, is that because you're approaching it from the point of view of a developer, or because just the naming is like inconsistent in the platform, or what's the challenge? What's the challenge there?
So no, I'm not a developer, and I'm picking it up. I mean, there's a certain learning curve with Bubble, so I suppose I was just asking if I jumped into the system. Are there?
Yeah. Okay. So I think the short answer is that there are a lot of with like every new system, there is a learning curve. So you will need to sort of like go through the educational material and really try to understand it. And kind of what we recommend there is there's like three ways that you can sort of find success on the system. One way is by, and the lowest cost route is, we have a group that we run with pro NoCoders, where you can go in and you can drop questions in there and ask specifically about particular things that you're looking to develop, like a feature, or like, you run into a problem, and there'll be someone from there that will respond to you. The other way,
the link. I just dropped that link in the chat.
Pro No-Coders also do their office hours where you can go in and you can ask questions directly there as well. And they'll do their best to answer those questions for you. And then we run ourselves on the Dittofi side. We have the boot camps that we run. And then we also do, we have like an 8x5 support channel that you can then also contact us in as well. But yeah, the short answer is there's a learning curve to all of these types of systems, and it's the same for ours. So yeah, you'll sort of need to commit to learning it. What we've sort of seen is that people can build applications and learn to build applications, but it's not until you've done your first one that you really start to understand how the system goes. So it's probably worth at the beginning taking the time to either go with the Pro No-Coders route or take one of the boot camps that we run because that gives you that sort of like more guided experience.
Yeah, so Marcus is a member of No Code School and Office Hours. So
Okay.
yeah, so he's got plenty of support.
Yeah.
Maybe
And
just
then-
one more question. Oh, sorry.
Actually, we have to take some other questions, Marcus, but
Yeah,
feel free to toss those questions to me. So we have, let's see, I think we answered. One is James Samuel. Is it possible to modify the SQL code directly and have the web visual representation keep up with the database modification?
You want to take that?
Yeah, so that is possible. And we'll kind of show actually in the next few weeks throughout the whole platform, it's possible to see kind of in real time the code that's actually generating in the background. That goes to like the database SQL code, as well as the backend Google Go code that we're generating and the front end kind of HTML and React code. And there are different areas where if you're a kind of more technical person, you can come and interact with that directly, either in certain areas just by overwriting it, or there are some places where there's kind of specific ways of doing that as well. But yeah, we'll give kind of more and more examples of that as we go through as well for the more technical people.
Awesome. And then just going back to the relations that you were showing us, the data table relations, Baraka had a question about so there's a link to another record field. What will be the use of it? And my estimation was that it meant that there's two things. So there's the unique constraint where we can't have another record with the same value in a field or a column. And then there's this kind of unique constraint combined with a real data constraint or an existing data constraint. So we can't create a record with that link if that link doesn't exist, if that linked record doesn't exist.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Okay.
100%.
Perfect. Let's see here. And then just to touch on Ola's question about flexibility with the user interface, yes, it is flexible and it's also responsive. You can make it responsive using Flex, but I think there's also some other things you might want to say about that, Samuel.
Yeah, we'll talk about that a lot when we build the front end. But a lot of the responsive design comes down to either kind of how you design your initial interface. So you can design the interface in such a way that when the screen shrinks, different things naturally fall into different places to make it look good on different size devices. And then you can do that all while building on your kind of main device screen. But then you can also kind of view it in different sizes and directly modify what things will look like at different sizes as well. So there's two areas to it really. There's one kind of your initial design, making sure that looks good and lots of different screen sizes, and then there's kind of making explicit overrides on the smaller devices as well.
Probably also worth mentioning there as well. So we also allow you to use your own styles sheets and also style sheets like Bootstrap, Tailwind, CSS. So you can actually import those directly into the platform as well. which is a limitation of other platforms which don't have that sort of like same closeness to the code. So for a lot of developers, what they'll want to do is, or even in a lot of the trainings that we do, we train people on how to build like the front end parts of their application. But then at some point, they'll reach a sort of a point in their education when they can actually go further, and they can actually start using more of the developer-based libraries and importing those into the system and then using those in a visual way as well, which is kind of cool.
All right, we've got 3 more questions, and then we're going to have to, 4 more questions, and then we're going to have to wrap it up. So Don, did you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Yes, a question for Samuel, actually. When you drew out the relationships on the ERD, did you say that actually created the primary and foreign keys?
Yeah, that's correct.
So that is actually something that you should do.
100%. Yeah, 100%. Yes.
And then just from Tanya's question earlier, if you use, rather than using a text field for the relationship, if you use a link field, that creates the keys for you. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks, Samuel.
Awesome.
Awesome. And then app developer is asking, can we use different databases with Dittofi as clients may want, or are we stuck with Google?
So we use ours is relational SQL database. If you host it with us, it goes into our hosting infrastructure, and then it will use the database that we provision for you, which is going to be Amazon RDS. If you export the code, then you can host the exported code on different SQL-based databases as well. And there's some kind of documentation in our website as well about how you actually go about setting that all up as well.
Awesome. And then Marcus asked if a typical category of app type that your early adopters first customers have been building, or has it been quite varied?
Been pretty varied. We've had everything from our biggest customers built two of our biggest customers. One built a real-time alerting system for data that was collected off rowing machines, which is, I guess, very peculiar use for the system. They essentially had built their initial platform in Python and had performance issues with the code. And because we had like big data processing capabilities, they decided to switch over to our platform. And then we had, they managed to deliver that project in about 8 weeks, which was shortened their development timeline by about, I think it was around 4 or 5 months. We had another customer who recently did a CRM that's kind of like a master CRM of other CRMs. That's another huge project that has to support, I think tens of thousands of concurrent users on day one. So those are probably the 2 largest. But yeah, we've had edtech platforms. We've had 2-sided marketplaces. We've had legal tech this week, where someone finished an application that Samuel helped them out with on one of the boot camps, doing like PDF analysis. So yeah, we've had really varied types of applications. Which has made, I guess, Samuel and his team very, very busy on trying to figure out how they can implement all of these in the 8 hours time frame. But so far, yeah, lots of success on that.
Awesome. And then last question for this time, we will be back next week at the same time. So if you've already signed up on Eventbrite, you don't need to sign up again. You can just come on back. And the last question here is, can I design it like it is in Webflow or Bubble? And I think the answer to this is you can do better than Webflow or Bubble, because you have complete access to the HTML and the CSS, and can even import CSS libraries as you wish. You agree?
That's a great answer.
Okay. Awesome. Very cool. Thank you, everybody, so much for being here. We can't wait to see you again next week. and we will continue on with like the backend actions next week.